excited to have Hey
Hi.
here. I would love for you to just let the audience know just a very quick introduction, like where do you live and what is your relationship to autoimmune disease?
Okay. Hi, Cheryl. Thank you
Mhm.
for having me. It's so nice to meet you in virtual real life.
Yes, yes.
Um, we met at a conference, but Autoimmune Community Summit. That was great.
Mhm. Mhm.
Now, my name is Haley Ferris,
Mhm.
but I go by Hay, and I've always gone by Hay. So that's just the first half of my name. But it's Hay Ferris, and I live in Birmingham, Alabama, and I'm 35. I don't know how else to
Awesome.
start.
Yeah, and then so what chronic illness do you or illnesses because we know they like to travel together, do you have?
Yeah. Oh, they love being together. So I have Behcet's vasculitis,
Mhm.
and vasculitis is a thing that if you're not familiar with it, that was, Ashton Kutcher just recently came out and was like, I
Mm.
couldn't walk very well for a year. I lost all these abilities. I had to relearn all these things. And then he said it was due to a form of vasculitis. So I
Mm.
also have a rare form of vasculitis, and it has taken me down for the past 10 years. But it came
Yeah.
with some extra friends and some extra
Mhm.
challenges. And that was um, common variable immune deficiency,
Okay.
and that's just uh it makes it complex to treat an autoimmune when you also have an immune deficiency. So
Mhm.
there's a balance you always have to walk there. And then just this year we found one of the worst manifestations of my vasculitis in microscopic colitis, because I've been on
Oh.
TPN before.
Oh,
There
can
were
you
a few
explain
years
what
where I did not eat.
Oh,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
sorry. Sorry, can you tell people what TPN stands for?
Okay. So TPN is total parenteral nutrition, and I'm a PharmD, a pharmacist. I graduated in 2011, but then I got sick in
Yeah.
2012. So I became very much a pharmacist towards these type of conditions, and
Yeah.
mainly mine. But TPN is basically vein food. It just means that
Mhm.
your GI tract is no longer able to absorb or take in any kind of nutrition for your body, and you can't even do like a J tube or something like that because
Mhm.
the the GI tract itself is not absorbing properly. So you have to skip it all together and then go straight to your veins with
Okay,
food.
yeah, yeah.
So
Sorry, I didn't mean to and so that and then
that's
you had
TPN.
microscopic colitis.
Yes, and the
Yeah.
microscopic colitis is one of the more difficult complications of my vasculitis, but
Mm.
I do have complications in every area. For example, I'm wearing my oxygen cannula right now because I am in chronic respiratory failure. I have my
Mhm.
fluids running right now through a Hickman line, which is a central IV line in my chest. And I'm running those right now so that I can have the hydration to sit up and talk with you right
Yeah.
now.
Well, and I'm first of all, I'm so grateful you're here because, like you said, you got diagnosed 10 years ago. Keep on
And
deciding between saying 2012 and 10 years ago. And it's starting to come out as 20 years ago. But so you know, you've been through a lot. And on this podcast, I have mostly had people with like inflammatory forms of arthritis or autoimmune forms of arthritis. So, before we go more into your personal story, because I do want that's like the main, like, you know,
okay.
um, just this is what people love hearing each other's stories, and
Yes.
feeling less alone and everything. But just because it's not a condition that I've really covered, like vasculitis, could you explain like what are some of the symptoms that you experienced, and what are some of the common symptoms of
Okay.
vasculitis? Or
So
Behet is it Behet's vasculitis?
Behcet's.
Behcet's.
Well, it's Behcet's
Okay,
or
sorry.
Behcet's or Behcet. It's just a
Okay.
whole. It's kind of just depends. And I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, so I guarantee you how I say it is
Oh,
not
yeah.
going to be the
No, it's
accurate way.
okay. It's okay.
Okay.
Yeah. I'll put the notes to
So
these conditions in the show notes so people can look them up if they want to learn more
that
too. But
that will
just,
be super helpful.
yeah, yeah.
So vasculitis just in general, it's just an inflammation of the blood vessels. And
Right.
so it's very similar. It causes an arthritis in me. It causes all kinds of different, wherever you find that this is kind of a weird way to generalize it, but wherever you find a blood vessel in your body, you can have a swollen, complicated vessel there. And
Mhm.
that is my manifestation of vasculitis is a lot of difficulty in all different size blood vessels of my body, from clots to bleeds, from
Mm.
fatigue to brain fog to the pulmonary embolism I had, brain bleed, lots of GI problems where it's malnutrition so severe that I can no longer eat. And
Mm.
I lost my ability to walk. I couldn't speak very well. There are still pieces of my journey because I'm still sick, but there are still pieces
Mhm.
of my journey that I am not even fully aware of because those around me experienced them and I was experiencing my own version of survival.
Right.
And so
Mm.
I'm still learning about some pieces, but yeah, I guess for me, I feel like I have grabbed some abilities back and I'm living life now a little bit more than I have in the past. But
Yeah.
then people still look at me and they say, "Well, you're wearing an oxygen cannula and you've got fluids running on into your chest,
Mhm.
IV
Mhm.
fluids, and I'm required to have those twice a day, if not more. And I can't leave my house because of the immune deficiency, especially now with
Mm.
COVID. My husband and I joke we were living the COVID life like 7 years before COVID even
Yeah.
started. And so
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of that it may seem small, like a very small life to many people, but it's it's such a great point to be at compared to where I have been that
Mhm.
it's weird for people to understand and fully grasp, but
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
from bruises to brain bleeds.
Well,
I don't know
yeah.
how to.
Oh my gosh. No, and it's so true. Like, your blood vessels are like delivering oxygen and nutrients
Yeah,
all over your body. So,
mhm.
so yeah, the fact
Kind of
that
important.
they're a little bit important. Yeah. Yeah. And I just, I really resonate with what you're saying about, you know, if you have a chronic illness, no matter how severe it is, there's always this tension between, wanting to make your life about controlling your symptoms. And obviously, that's really important when you're in survival mode. But there's also kind of
Mhm.
this like, I don't believe in Maslow's hierarchy completely, right? Because Maslow's hierarchy is like, we don't, he was like, we start with needing the basic things like food and shelter and safety. And then we only when those are perfectly met, and I think you would almost put health in there, then you can go to these higher, like abstract love and art. But
Oh,
like, don't
my
we?
word.
Yeah. What do you think about that? Sorry. I've already gone
Oh,
us on a
that's a
tangent.
very great that is such a good question
Yeah.
because here's how I think that applies extremely differently for chronic illness patients
Hmm.
or for in general patients with a disease or a prolonged illness.
Hmm.
There is no there you can get stuck trying to fit yourself into a box or a triangle or a hierarchy that seems like it
Hmm.
should be the way to go. And the truth of the matter is your journey is your journey.
Yeah.
And while there will be pieces that you can share and find in common with others, which is invaluable, sometimes you'll also be kind of like how I was for a while, where no one had ever met anyone as severe as me who was
Hmm.
still here. And so,
Hmm.
my doctors included, I had a
Hmm.
nursing home stay when I was 31 years old, and it was
Wow.
after talks of palliative care. So, it's a very
Hmm.
interesting um, thing to try to live through surviving
Yeah.
when you
Yeah.
know that the hierarchy of needs is necessary and true, but how do you find life within that basic level of still striving for your main, food, shelter?
Yeah.
How do
Yeah.
you find art and like
Yeah.
faith and all of these other things when you are still in a stuck space? I call it a ditch. You just are stuck
Mm,
in the ditch over and over,
yeah.
and you're trying to climb out of the ditch, but you keep going through that same cycle, and that's where all your energy gets expended. And the
Yeah.
cycle of survival doesn't often, in the way that the world perceives productivity,
Mm,
the
mhm.
cycle of survival does not equate and mix up, and I mean, and align up with a valuable life in like a
Mm,
productivity definition of it. And so with Maslow's hierarchy of needs, I agree in places too, but I
yeah.
also say we need a chronic illness hierarchy of needs
Mhm.
and living because it does alter everything about life. Everything
Yeah.
about life. It's a different pattern of life with different concerns. And if you've got your health, praise Jesus.
Yeah. Don't take it for granted. I know it really
Don't take it for
is
granted.
so true. And I want to go back to a time. I'm always trying to be linear and failing, but let's go back to
Ooh.
2012 in your personal story. And first of all, Hey has an amazing blog or website where you can read some more that I'll put in the show notes as well. But
Thank
because
you.
you yeah, I cannot truly imagine what it would be like to go from feeling. I mean, would you say in 2011 you felt in normal health, for a
I can even I would say I can give you a great example. When I was 19, I was on the game show Deal or No Deal.
Oh, yes, that picture's on her
And
website. We will link to that.
yes,
We'll link to that.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it is it I was wearing a tennis outfit because I was an athlete and I had
Yeah.
played tennis for my whole life. And I was could have played in college, and I had to
Mm,
quit my senior year because of a heart problem. Now,
mhm.
that's a
Oh.
related to my vasculitis, but we didn't know
Mm,
it at the time because I died when I was 17. I had a whole entire near death experience and all of that,
right, right.
which I
Okay.
call my death experience. So
Right.
coming back from that, I was well enough to go onto Deal or No Deal and jump around and then go to
Mm,
pharmacy school and become a PharmD and then work
okay.
full time as a pharmacist. So I had some amazing levels that I took for granted for sure of
Mhm.
ability and achievement, and then got a headache one day in 2012 with some
Mm.
GI symptoms and never returned to being a full-time pharmacist again.
Yeah. That's such a rude timing of the universe that you
It
had
was very
just
rude timing.
yeah,
Yes.
you had studied so because I know PharmD is not an easy degree.
Oh, how inconsiderate.
I know, and you had
But
student
yeah,
loans. I'm just like,
I
ugh.
had, yes, many, because I paid for my own undergrad too. So I had
Oh,
student loans. They exceeded $200,000 at the highest point as well, because I had paid
wow.
some of them down, but then they went into deference because we got sick. And I say we
Yeah.
got sick because it took over our entire household.
And
It
how
took
long
over
yeah. How long had you
everything.
been married at that time?
Oh my, bless. Um, sorry, I'm in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm gonna say things
No, I love
like
it.
bless. Okay, so my husband and I got married on 10/9/10, which is
Okay.
October 9th,
Oh,
2010.
hey, happy
Now we had been
anniversary.
together for oh, thanks. Yeah, it was just recently, wasn't it? This month.
Yeah.
Yep. So, we had been together for 5 years prior to that,
Okay.
but we had only been married, I mean, weeks shy of our second anniversary. Just
Mhm.
weeks before our second wedding
Wow.
anniversary is when I got sick.
And you're in your
So now we've
mid-20s.
been
Yeah.
in age 25, and I
Okay,
just
yep.
turned 35 this
Okay.
year.
Okay.
So we've been married for 12 years, and this was actually the first birthday of my marriage that we actually were able to try to celebrate. Because
Mm.
before it was pharmacy school, pharmacist working, just really hardcore, and then so quickly it was just all illness all the time.
Mm.
So,
And I know that's one of, because I primarily kind of interact with the autoimmune community who kind of in the
mhm,
younger to middle ages, just because that's who's on social
mhm.
media where I
Yeah.
am a lot. And I think it's a lot of huge fear of a lot of people is,
Mhm.
will my partner stay with me? Or so I mean, I
I
don't even know.
cannot even that is the truth, and it's really scary and it's really sad, and, that is I will say this, I'm a fall risk. I like to say this. I
Mm,
like to say I'm a fall risk. Everywhere that
yeah.
I go into, I've always been labeled a fall risk bracelet. I had a very bad fall last year, and I experienced what that was like.
I'm
But
sorry. Yeah.
it's okay. I'm a fall risk, but I say that now in this context because I can only know my own experience. And so I really don't want to speak into the heart of anyone who might be experiencing anything with their partner, because we had our own story where it was extremely, extremely trying on our
Mhm.
marriage and our every aspect of our lives. But I one thing my husband did not do was completely give up. He he
Mm,
he stuck around, and that is, I know, an extremely rare blessing. So I
yeah.
don't even know. So that's why I say I'm a fall risk with a lot of these topics. I just feel at a loss because I don't know what to say into that
Mm.
space
Oh,
at
I
all.
mean,
So
no,
that's
all you
why if I
can
speak there, then I fall on my face because I don't know the exact
no.
experience.
Well, the
Yeah.
one thing that we are all are an expert in is our own stories,
Yeah.
and that's your story that you have a partner that stayed with you. And
Mhm.
that's I think that will give a lot of people listening hope if that's
Oh,
one of their deep,
yeah.
dark fears. I joke sometimes,
Yeah.
and my illness, like, and not to play like suffering Olympics, I always say it's not good for
I
your mental
hate
health to
suffering
play.
Olympics,
But I
not
mean,
even a thing. But
objectively, like I have not had this. I mean, if you just as a gross measurement, like I haven't had this severity of illness that you have. I think that's just objectively true. But
yeah, just
I
an
joke,
objective statement.
yeah, it just is. But at the same time, I
I'm on
joke,
on
yeah. But I'm like, my husband's like too stubborn to leave because he would be like,
Oh,
he's like we're both very stubborn and very optimistic. So I think we both kind of will just,
yeah.
no, we'll fix this. We'll find the way. We'll
You'll
find the
fix
way.
okay, okay, we're in it.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Anyway,
sweet.
yeah, he
It's
would
a
never.
I do like
Anyway,
to speak up for that too. I do actually really wanna speak for just a second on,
please.
my husband being that partner, because that was
Mhm.
not always the way he was encouraged to go. He was given in
Mm.
times when it was very tough for both of us, we were both given advice that because no one can know exactly what you're going through. They were
Mhm.
all well intended, but you know what we say with well intentions, it's not always the product of what
Yeah.
comes out. So it always, to me, it also just tugs at my heart. And I want to say, I love my partner. I love him. He is my best friend. Neither one of us are here by chance because we worked. We
Mm.
survived in every avenue. We were dying. So it was like our relationship included. It was
Mm.
extremely difficult, and it would not have been possible without God and Jesus, but it
Mm, mhm.
definitely would not have been possible also without communication and just the grace of the Lord. I don't know how else. It was not a there is hope, but man, I understand that I don't understand. Like I
Yeah,
understand that
yeah,
that's something I do not know. Ah, and
yeah.
it wasn't fun to be me either, so I don't know. There's
It's
hope though, right?
yeah, no, no. I mean, just the fact that you're still together, just on with nothing else is it does give hope. But I agree that I don't want it to be I don't want to say that in a flippant way. Like I want it, like it's kind
Yeah.
of like the way I talk about acceptance. Acceptance sounds like the easy way out. It's actually the hard way out.
Mm,
Like,
it
and
is
having
very
hope
much the hard way. Yes.
in this, it's easy to give up and walk away from someone. It's harder to stay
Hmm.
together when times are tough.
Yeah.
So yeah, so in your guys's case, I'm sorry, we weren't even planning on talking so much about
No, we weren't. We weren't.
but again, we both talked before this that, the conversation always meanders into
We'll flow.
interesting territory. But yeah, so, communication helped. And sometimes I've heard people say, and I know that I think this was brought up at some point. We both attended, again, like you mentioned, the Autoimmune Community Summit through the
Mhm.
Autoimmune Association. That yeah, one of the talks
Yes.
in the mental health talked about how
Relationships.
well, and also that survival mode kind of brings your priorities into sharp focus. Like
Yes.
you're not like most weds, like were arguing, like you left your socks on the floor, or like,
Oh, yeah.
you're
Oh,
not,
yeah. Oh,
it
yeah.
kind of brings
We
like,
definitely
yeah,
did not get to do that. We did not get to it was very interesting too because even just in the past, say, like, 6 months, I've started to be able to I'll just give, like, a little I've started to be
yeah,
able to sit up. I've started to be able
yeah.
to walk. I've started to be able to, like, walk with endurance, I mean, because when I lived in the nursing home in fall of 2018, I relearned walking and I regained
Hmm.
that. But the endurance part of it was always just gone. There was just so much fatigue.
Hmm.
It was the hollowed out feeling where you are just the thinnest wafer shell thick, and that is your whole essence. That's how
Oh,
I existed feeling like, at least. And so I felt like any wisp of wind would just blow me away, but at the same time I had gained 200 pounds, but
mhm.
I wasn't eating. It was all my
Yeah.
body not knowing how to react to everything. And so just this year, I've been able to walk better. I've been able to maneuver around my house. I've been able to go downstairs and try to fix my husband dinner instead of,
Wow.
eating through bed and all this stuff. Like,
Hmm.
I walked out to the mailbox the other day. I'm making great strides. And so, in this respect, that's why I seem so full of hope and so
Hmm.
happy, is because I'm just so thankful I can even be speaking with you and have attended that
Hmm.
autoimmune community summit
Yeah.
and be maybe because most of us who go through maybe the depths of the severity in all our own individual ways, however that manifests with whatever our thing is,
Hmm.
whatever I can hopefully speak toward my version of the depths and what that felt like. And I'm hoping now that I am able to sit up and converse and maybe share my story, that I can give a voice to some feelings that are very difficult to relay, especially when you're stuck in the survival mode where you have no energy and you can't even use
Yeah.
brain power to even try to get someone to understand how you're feeling. Like, they ask, people would always ask me, "How are you?" And I felt like,
Mm.
and I addressed this on my site at one point too, because I felt like I wanted I I wanted to tell them in all honesty, I am not doing okay. Like, this is
Yeah.
not going very well, but I also didn't have the energy to fulfill that statement.
Mhm,
So,
mhm.
a lot of times I would get stuck between honesty in friendships and relationships and my disease. And it was like there was a block, and there's a
Mhm,
big solid wall between the understanding of those two pieces. And it also depends on how many spoons you have that day. Christine
mhm.
Miseranda, spoon theory. So it's a whole big old combination of things together that stop us from being able to accurately express our experience with
Yeah.
chronic illness life. And I'm hoping that with this blip of health I have right here, which I'm saying health and I'm still hooked up to an IV and I'm still on
Mhm.
oxygen. But like I've explained, my little bit of health I have going on right here and my definition of it. I'm hoping that maybe just being able to share from the depths, it might allow people to feel more in common and to feel less
Yeah.
alone and to know that, hey, it's Hay's still here.
Yeah.
Hey, hey, I didn't
Hey,
mean to do
hey,
that. We could
hey.
say that a different way. We could say that a different way.
No, no, it's
To
okay.
let people know that at least somebody's out there trying with energy to give voice to what it was like for that person, and that person is me.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah, and I wanna ask more about that really, really low period in 18. But before that, I just wanna, because I don't wanna forget to ask this. Did you start any new treatments, or do you have any idea why things have taken a turn for the better health-wise now?
Yeah, I
Okay.
definitely have um, a lot of different it's a balance, right?
Mhm.
And so everything I think of like a one of those electronic like digital mixing boards where like for sound
Oh,
where you see all the
yes.
different lines going up and down, right? You got to get the perfect exact alignment of all of them, the right base and the right, all of these
Yeah.
different things. And for me, that's you got to get a little bit of this. You got to get a little bit of IV therapy. You got to get a little bit. The IV therapy has to be lactated ringers. It can't be normal saline. You need to have,
Mm.
so it was all so specific because of how in depth and how individualized my diseases got in their specific combination, how the treatments fought against and exacerbated the
Mm.
other diseases. So we
Yeah.
were just fighting against what seemed to be an impossible, like walking an impossible tightrope. So I
Mhm.
tried and failed so many different treatments over years, and I was a pharmacist, so I mean, I was familiar with the appropriate way
Yeah.
to try a treatment to know this treatment did not work or this
Yeah.
side effect is from this treatment. So I had a little bit of an advantage in that respect where I was able to say, no, I can't start all of these treatments new at the same time. We have to do this one and this
Mhm.
one. So I had a big advantage in that respect. So over the years, I was just simply trial and error, but in a way that was very specific to my body and knowing just intricately, okay, we got that one little column set and things work pretty well when that base column is on this exact
Mhm.
setting. Now let's
Mhm.
move to the very next one and the very next. And so it became a process like a chain of dominoes. And then this year, finally, I had a colonoscopy hit because oh my gosh, I've had 4 fecal transplants because I've had
Okay.
C. diff
Oh.
several times, and, my body, because of my immune deficiency,
Yeah.
cannot handle all of the treatments for it, and anyways,
Mhm.
it's a very difficult combination. So,
Mhm.
that's getting me sidetracked because it is a very difficult combination. So I've tried many things, but like for example, like a Humira or something, I
Mhm.
couldn't do Remicade. I couldn't do
Mm.
Humira and it be safe because I
Right.
would catch all of the infections then and I would just be sick
Right.
from head to toe with all kinds of infections and I'm allergic to, penicillins. So, yay,
Yeah.
it's just a good
I
combination. But
Oh, yeah.
I don't know. It's eventually over the years what we found was kind of like an equation that worked and that's I guess how I would explain it because this year we had a doc I have about 7 specialists and they
Mhm.
all thank Jesus they all coordinate together and speak together
Mhm.
only because of the only because of where the palliative care aspect. That's why,
Mhm.
like, only because of how difficult things got. So,
And
because they
over
all get together.
just real quick, in
Yeah,
case people haven't heard what palliative care is, like comfort
yes,
care or like end of life care,
it is
typically.
end of life care. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
comforting end of life care where you switch and your goals are now different. Your
Mhm.
goals change from, say, a treatment to prolong life and hopefully impact in a positive way, dare I
Mhm.
say, remission or cure, those big
Right,
words.
right, right.
But that's typically the goal. But then when you switch your goal over to palliative care, that is comfort care, that is end of life care. It is
Mhm.
definitely, we sat down, made our wills with an end of
Right,
life
yeah.
lawyer, all that. So it's a yeah, I guess this is gonna be a pretty heavy.
Well, but it's
I
so
can't
important
not. It's my
that
story and it's so important. People
yeah.
can't speak from this spot very easily. And so that's why
No.
I want to speak.
No, so thank you. Sorry, I didn't mean to, I'm just
Mhm.
saying validating and
Yeah.
yeah, and I think actually, regardless of whether you have a chronic illness, thinking about end of life care is actually something that everyone should be doing because you never
Yes.
know. There's this woman in Seattle that started this website, and I hope it's okay to swear, but it's
Yeah.
getyourshittogether.com. Get your shit
Oh, that is
together. Yeah,
appropriate.
because her husband went out for a run, had a heart attack, died, and they were like, they had two small kids, they were in their 30s, and like it could happen to anyone, and so she actually has all these
Absolutely.
free templates. My husband and I did them before my son was born, just because even though we should have done it earlier, but
That's
it
good to
was
do.
like,
Yeah.
because I was pregnant and we were like, okay, in case we know things can go wrong with that on top of having chronic illness. But anyway, but in your case, that's really preventative care. But when you actually have doctors telling you it's time to start
Yeah,
palliative care, that means that
it was a weird thing. That was definitely very clearly and very quickly, we had some friends. See, one thing that I've learned too is that because we were so out of step with everyone around us in our age
yeah.
group, we were
Mhm.
not experiencing the same stages of life, but we were
Yeah.
the same youthfulness. We were the
Yeah.
same decade, but we weren't experiencing the same things. And
Yeah.
we weren't experiencing what we had thought we would experience either. So it
Yeah.
was really interesting. We are so thankful, bless all of our friends. That what we found is sometimes the capacity, you don't even know you have the capacity that you have to
Mhm.
contain all kinds of and withstand all kinds of difficulties. But one thing that we really learned is that the way that you receive and hold other people's stories and
Mm.
their lives and their experiences has to be infinitely more gentle than you ever would think that you should,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
in the initial reactions a lot of time that people would have to us if we say, hey, we had to get our papers together, we had to get our wills together. We had a few people who their first reaction, just naturally, it makes complete sense, they're like, oh, that's good to do anyway, yeah, we need to do
Oh,
that.
that's kind of what I
And
said.
no, no,
Yeah.
no, no, it's
Sorry.
totally fine. No, but
But
what
no.
you said is good. It's true. It is completely true. What you said is true, and I want everyone to hear it. Please, please, please get your stuff together. You can that all day long. That is amazing.
Okay.
So, it seriously is important, but I do also want to point out as well, like everything, there is some nuance to it because ours was out of necessity
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
opposed to out of, it's good to do. And we understand that that's not something that anyone around our age would even like begin to go down that lane of thinking, man, we need this because we need this right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah.
That's fortunately, hopefully, not going to be on your to-do list today,
Mhm. Mhm.
but it should be on your to-do list but just with a different motivation pushing it, just with a
Yeah.
different perspective leading it through. But like I was saying about the what our friends' initial reactions would be because of our extreme, the just the extremeness of our experience. My husband and I, that's why I say our as well,
Yeah. Yeah.
because it totally flipped his life as well. So anyways, the extremeness of it has led me to know that whatever people's first reactions are to what we are saying to them or opening up to
Mhm.
them, whatever their very, very first thing they say is, that first thing is the one that you just say, okay, that's theirs. You let it roll off of you because it's going to
Mhm.
say more about how they're receiving it internally than it is about how they feel toward you. It's
Right.
all about how they're receiving it. So, for example, I the whole getting the will thing done, and then I'm literally haven't sat at the kitchen table in years, but then we go sit at the kitchen table to do our wills. And
Yeah.
so like when I if I feel even safe enough to address that conversation with any of my
Yeah.
friends or loved ones afterwards and have the energy and then I'm able to devote like that's what I can do with my energy is then speak
Right.
to them about that topic. If I get to that point, then I understand it's also going to be blunt and fresh and raw and an
Mhm.
awakening for them as well because we were not prepared for this to hit us. It is very difficult to also just speak about it or speak with someone you love, let alone speak with anyone about the
Mhm.
rawness and the reality of making your will because you need it at age
Mhm.
29. You know, and so
Mhm.
it's the reactions of, "Oh, that's just good to do." I know that is exactly the appropriate reaction that you should have, and I want people to have because I want that's exactly the point. I want y'all to do that so that
Mhm.
when and if ever there would come a time you don't have to do what we had to do. Like
Mhm.
you are there and you are settled and you are fine. And so if you can't start those conversations because maybe your relationships aren't what they once were, or maybe you're having to share things with people who were used to love, but maybe not quite right now love kind of thing, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
I really do hope that my words speaking from this place can go forward and maybe be an icebreaker or even just be like a hey, we got to do this before something like this, comes up. Let's never
Yeah.
have that happen, hopefully. But I feel like going through all this extreme stuff and now having a little bit of an ability to even speak, I'm hoping that maybe some people can hear a little bit of a story from that area of depletion because the people who are that depleted cannot exert their energy towards speaking
Oh,
about
that's
it.
yeah. Yeah, and I think that something that my therapist has taught me related to this is that oftentimes we are taught from a young age to avoid discomfort. And so often a lot of these things that we say that are kind of inappropriate to someone with a chronic illness or an acute illness or end of life situation,
Mhm.
it's like when people say it's all going to work out. You're going to beat this. It's because it's like
Mm,
I am too uncomfortable with the idea that you might not beat this, or I'm too
that's it.
uncomfortable with the fact that you're 25 and you're having to do your end of life care, that I'm going to comfort
That's it.
myself and attempt to comfort you by saying, "Oh, that's
Yes.
just a good thing." You don't, but you're like, "No, that's not the point. Of course it's a good thing. But the point is that
Yeah, of
I
course.
have to do it. I don't
Yeah,
have a
the point is please
choice."
yes, and the point is please do this so you are not in this scenario, although we couldn't have done it any sooner. It was ours just came up as it was. But we hope that doesn't
Mhm.
happen for others. But it's really interesting too because my uncle had written a book like a long time ago when I was a little kid, and it was called Wants, Wishes, and Wills. And it was about preparing for like the
No
end of
way.
life. And I feel like it was in the 90s or something because I definitely didn't read it or even like really know much more than the title and what it was about.
That's
It's
so
kind of one of those
interesting.
floaty things from your
Yeah.
childhood that like this existed. But it certainly came back to my mind I didn't know much about it, but it certainly came back to my mind around that time. I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, maybe he was onto something with
Right. But well,
but
and
yeah.
it also ties into something we had talked about before, which is, resisting the impulse or the pressure to force your
Mhm.
illness into a tidy narrative. And
Oh,
as I'm sure people can tell, given how eloquent you are also a writer, but, you wrote to me when we were emailing before this that, sometimes you
mhm.
don't get a full character arc with everything all tied up neatly
No.
in a bow. And so, yeah, I would love to hear more about like times when maybe you felt pressure to quote unquote get better, or people asking, are you better yet? Or what's helped you
Oh,
cope, or
yep.
yeah, anything you want to say on that.
Yeah. That is so I love that you picked up on that also out of what I had answered because being a writer and being literally in the area of publishing where I was interning for a literary agent. Like I was
Oh.
reading manuscripts, I was helping my friends who are now one of the first chapters that I read it in a manuscript and it became a number one New York Times bestseller. So this is how I was on that road. And I was very
Mhm.
much in this space and I love it. And I love writing for kids, but that's where I originally started. I wanted to do young adult and middle grade and I still have a middle grade book that I'll probably have to get to get it back
Mhm.
out there. But just because my journey got stopped so quickly.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
with all of that study and all of that knowledge of character arcs and the way that we are so used to stories in 45 to 65 minutes, to
Mhm.
have the full wrap. It's like, here's the problem, here's the answer.
Yeah.
Yay, we're done. And it's like you wrap up and you're done. And that's because of television and all of the way we consume media. And like sometimes you'll be able to get a seasonal character arc, like where or somebody
Mhm.
over a
Yeah.
series gets even deeper growth. And we like those shows better because
Right.
we know who that person is and we can follow them along. It's more realistic to life. And it's so difficult, especially with social media, for
Mhm.
you to give an accurate representation of the depth of what you're going through as a chronic illness patient
Yeah. Yeah.
accurately because you are on what I said in one of my earlier posts was you're on a blindfolded roller coaster that you've never seen. You've never even
Yeah.
seen it. And so you don't know how long it lasts. You don't know where it's going to turn. You don't know anything about this. And so there are some days where I can pop on to my Instagram and say, "Hey y'all, I walked to the mailbox today. This was amazing and it was a big deal."
Mhm.
And then there's the next day where I didn't get out of bed and I made no posts on Instagram. That doesn't mean that I was still skipping to the mailbox that
Yep.
day. That means I
Yep.
didn't post. I don't know what I did. I could have just laid
Right.
there. So it's very difficult to even like it can exhaust people just like it exhausts us to be sick for
Mhm.
forever.
Mhm.
It
Mhm.
can exhaust our people to not get resolution every time. That becomes the only thing they can ask you about. Like, well,
Right.
Hay? How's Hay doing with this? How's Hay doing with that? And it's never a full, oh, she's doing great. We're good. Like, and specifically here in my world, because my world is very much my faith and spirituality section goes with Jesus. And so
Mhm.
that goes straight through that lens where people would pray. They'd be
Mhm.
praying and praying and praying. And then they're like, oh yeah, she's still sick, right? So
Oh, I
it's
see this pressure
always,
for the prayer to like, has it
yeah,
worked yet? Okay,
it's
I'll
all kinds of stuff like
yeah,
that too. And
interesting.
so it's
Yeah.
just like our in it's we have an insatiable need and desire for happy full character arc,
Happy endings. Yeah.
the happy ending kind of thing. And if not the happy ending, then at least some kind of denouement, like some kind of like resolution or
Resolution.
something,
Yeah.
and it's
Yeah.
not. That is, we all know if we've lived any moment of life, we
Right.
know not everything gets a resolution. And as a matter of fact, the things that get a resolution, we should actually just throw little parties for those, because
Yeah.
resolutions are just like, they should be celebrated. They should not be expected. They
They're
should
the
be
diamond in the
celebrated.
rough. Yeah. Yeah.
They are the diamond in the rough. Yes, Aladdin.
Yes.
So it is just, it's just something that struck me greatly as coming from the writing space and as a writer and like critiquing manuscripts and learning about story structure, that like
Mhm.
there's this thing called like save the cat. It's a beat sheet where of how to, like, you need to have a problem, the cat needs to be in trouble, you need to save it, all these different things. And it tells you like the general story structure of what our brains and our minds just expect
Right.
in a complete story. And
Right.
so with social media and with chronic illness, where you drop off because you're devoting your energy to your
Yeah.
necessities, it turns into kind of like a hit or miss game, and you're just like at a
Yeah.
carnival game and you're just like throwing balls and you're like, well, I thought this one was going to hit that dude over there, but it really went down here and hit that one over there. And that doesn't describe at all what I felt like when I was throwing it. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
one of those
Right.
kind of scenarios where you just can't, just like life cannot be wrapped up with a little tidy bow, unfortunately. I think
Mhm.
it's our responsibility though, just as like being a good person and being an empathetic human, to not hold our friends and relatives to the standard of they have to be presented as a perfect package too,
Yeah,
and
that's a
not be
good
wrapped up
point.
as a
Mhm.
bow. Because if it's not happening for me over here, and I know it's not, there's no doubts about that. And then it's going to be really difficult for everyone else as well. And I try to hold that spot now. I try to hold a little
Mhm.
bit of like a hole there and just say this space, I guess, is a little bit of grace or a little bit of, leeway where I can say, okay, that's why I say I would let the first reactions roll off of me, because it's more of a reflection of what they're confronting than it is
Mhm. Mhm.
like what you're talking about with your therapist, than it is of
Yeah.
what on me. Like the first time a really good friend saw me after I had gained 160 pounds and I had
Mm.
forgotten to tell her.
Oh,
And she
okay.
walked in the room. Yeah. And she stopped and she goes, so we're a little swollen today. And I was like, that was the kindest way to address
Yeah,
it. And I was
yeah.
just thankful that her initial response came out that way,
Right.
as opposed to all of these other ways it could have. And it just shows me the importance of an initial reaction in my own self when I'm addressing anything outside of my
Yeah.
own experience.
Oh, 100%. And one of my favorite phrases I learned, and I can't remember whether it was my therapist or the book, The Happiness Trap by Russ Harris, which is a fabulous book. I talk about it all the time, but it's about acceptance and commitment therapy and like accepting uncertainty. Let me see, how to stop struggling and start living. It sounds like it's like a vapid, like pop psych book, but it's actually really deep. And it's about like actually suffering is the default condition of life, like we were just talking about, and that
Yes.
if our expectations are that we will suffer, that's part of life, then we won't be chronically
Yeah.
disappointed when we do suffer, but one of the phrases that he said, I think Russ Harris, or maybe it was my therapist, but it's said a lot in the mindfulness community, is like riding the waves of uncertainty. And so I've started saying that
Yep.
sometimes if someone's asking me, like when I've been having more like flare-ups of my chronic health issues, to be like, how are you doing? I'll be like, I'm riding the waves of uncertainty. Like, and that means
Yeah,
that
that's a
like,
great way to
I'm
phrase
not
it.
happy about it. Like I'm,
No.
but I'm accepting that like,
Yeah.
but I think uncertainty, like my therapist really helped me hone in on that was my big, that's been one of my big triggers. And I kept being like, well,
Mhm.
yeah, but I don't like uncertainty, but I'll just find the certainty. I'll just find the answer. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah,
solve a
isn't that,
problem. I just get it. Yeah.
it's that
But
easy, of
yeah,
course.
I was like, Okay, that's true. And he goes, that's true for solvable problems, but you
For
don't always,
solvable problems.
yeah, chronic illness is not necessarily a solvable problem. Some people will find a solution. They'll drink celery juice or they'll take their medicine and that,
Yeah, exactly.
but
It's not gonna be the
that's
same for everybody.
no. And that's where the whole
Oh,
resolution, like a story is a, a problem and then the resolution of it. That's where we have to say in a chronic illness, we have maybe things that are partially resolved, but a lot of
mhm.
these problems are perpetual. So then this happy ending for me I've started to become really interested in like how can the happy ending actually be coming to terms with these unsolvable
Yes,
problems,
yes,
and trying to maximize your values and meaning and joy in your life with the
where you
uncertainties.
are.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly, right
Oh,
where you
sorry.
are. That's very good wisdom because
Yeah.
that's ultimately, I mean, I don't know how else to say it other than, like, the in that National National Treasure, the 2nd movie, they're like, it's the riddle is the debt that all men pay, and the answer is
Mm.
death. And it to me, though, it it really resonates a little more. This is why I love kids' books and stuff, and
Yeah, yeah.
because it's an adult lesson, so it's being said to children, like Madeline L'Engle said. But that's a quote from her, but I
Mm,
just messed it up
mhm.
really bad. But
Oh,
anyways,
no, no, no.
it's it's a thing where it just the fact is we all share as humans. We share the fact that we are gonna die. And that's like a very
Yeah.
tough concept to confront face on, but it is the one thing that we all have in common with our
Mm,
existence.
mhm,
And so
mhm.
we all feel that and process that in different ways. We approach it in different ways.
Mhm.
But unless we are comfortable, not that you have to be super comfortable with that fact, but I mean, like, unless we are familiar with even confronting the fact that we're not a permanent structure
Yeah,
physically here,
yeah,
then we can get stuck in the realms of certainty and being like, well, this is what I need and that, but when we acknowledge that, well, ultimately, I don't have any control over this part anyway because it's going to end in the physical here. And for me
yeah.
personally, it keeps going in the spiritual, but I do think
Right.
there's a spiritual element that helps too to
Mhm.
also see beyond that. But man, having faced death a few too many times now,
Yeah,
it is
yeah.
it is a thing that I don't really want to be comfortable with it, but I
Mhm.
also do not want to be unfamiliar with
Yeah.
my personal response.
Mhm,
I want to just be
mhm.
practiced and measured so that too I can provide a practiced and measured and wise uh, comfort to those around me experiencing
Mhm.
it
Mhm, mhm.
because it's gonna hit everybody at some point.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and
the patient and the caregiver, like, everybody will be a patient or a caregiver at some point in their life. It just is how it works, and
mhm.
it's similar to that. But anyway,
Yeah, no, and I was gonna say, like, I'm wondering when in even though you had experience with healthcare, I wonder if, like, when you first started getting really sick in 2012, like, was there like, for a lot of people, there's a transition between, like, I'm getting really sick and I'm thinking about it in the acute illness model, and, like, I just need to
mhm,
find the right doctor and find the right medicine and find the right treatment, and then we'll get
yep.
past this. Like, what was it like to go from like, did you have that experience first of wanting it to just, okay, we're just gonna thinking it's a short-term thing, and then what was it like to have to
Oh,
come to
yeah.
terms with it being chronic? That's like a whole
Yeah.
life other story.
It's
I know we don't please tell
it's a
me, by
whole
the
yeah.
way, how much time you have because I know we're already going a little
I
over,
don't
but
know if you see my power flicker a couple times. I don't know if
oh,
I'll be something just started, like, brewing outside,
oh
so
no,
we'll
a
see,
storm
but
is a brew.
I'm great right now. But,
Oh, good.
no, that's yep, that was
Yeah,
the very first yep, I'm just gonna say yes, nail on the
yeah,
head, boom, Cheryl, hit it.
yeah,
But that is what we all experience, I feel like, because we all don't know if it's the sniffle is what is the sniffle, or
Mhm,
the pain in our
mhm.
back, what is causing the pain in our back. So it could be infinite things like microscopic, macroscopic. They're just, it could be all the way down to the cellular level something, or it could just be, oh, you bruised it a tiny bit, or you bonked
Mhm.
it, or something.
Yeah.
So it's at the very beginning, the toughest point for me with dealing with the acute versus chronic nature of the illness was simply in the form of people asking me, how are
Mm.
you doing? It was that was the only thing that spotlighted it for me over and over. To It's
Yeah.
like, I know I'm living in my reality. I know that I am living in illness. I know that I
Yeah.
am still sick. Trust me, I know. And I know that y'all care. And I know that y'all really do love me. I just also don't have an answer.
Yeah.
We don't have answers, and now there's 6 doctors that don't have answers, and now there's another doctor, and you think it's hard to get an appointment with one specialist, when something goes wrong. It's very, very difficult to keep getting appointments with specialists when the
Yeah.
answers keep being, "We don't know," or "There's something a little off, but we can't tell what." And then you
Oh, I
just keep
hate that
getting
one.
that,
Yeah.
and you keep feeling sick. So there's always gonna I feel like with every illness, there is always that tiny little fear in everybody's heads. I know a lot of my mama friends, no, they would say the same. Your kid
Mhm.
gets a little fever, and you're like, we got to hold up here, full stop, because your
Uh-huh.
brain will domino into all of the scariest possible things. And as it is okay to do as a mom, by the way, that's a protective mechanism that
Of
we
course.
have.
Yes,
But
yes, yes. No,
but
but
I cannot speak anymore to the mom part, but I can say that seems similar to how I think we all innately approach any kind of sniffles we get, or any kind of twang in
mhm.
our back. And it really, for me, what helped was when I kind of there was such a fatigue, and there was such a cloud that came over me, that was not a mental health cloud particularly at the
Mhm.
very beginning, but it was the brain fog cloud, or it was
Mhm.
where there were waves of,
Yeah.
flares worsening and symptoms worsening, and then receding just a little bit, but I was still extremely sick. And so, because there was no ultimate full on relief, and I did not experience at any point after my initial headache a I was on 186 days of bed rest when I came home from my very
Wow.
first hospital stay.
Oh
So
my
it
gosh.
was something where, and I definitely did that math, had enough time to sit there and do it.
Yeah, yeah,
But it was an experience to then also try to relay to concerned people around, or just anyone in our lives, like my job, like the people that I worked with, like, when are you coming back? Like, what's all the
yeah,
paperwork like? Are you going to keep your job? It was there were so many aspects to being sick, and being sick for longer than just a week or two,
yeah.
that it was and we didn't have long COVID even yet. We didn't
Mhm.
have a lot of that yet.
Recognition, yeah.
Yeah, we were in a different era. And even now, we don't know exactly, like, what we're dealing with, but
Mhm.
with long COVID or anything like that. But there is so much more awareness for autoimmune type illnesses now,
Yeah,
that certainly I hope will help. And that's certainly why I hope to speak some, and see if my experience might be able to help at least give some awareness, or give some people who don't have the
yeah.
energy, or don't have the words, or don't have the hope, to be like,
Mhm.
I don't know, maybe, maybe this
Yeah,
is
yeah.
okay. Maybe there's more people like me out there that are
Yeah.
living this kind of life, but we don't have the energy to sit up and talk all the time about it. So if somebody can
Mhm.
just hear this when they're laying there and all they can do is listen to podcasts, hey friend,
Mhm.
I feel you. There is
Yeah,
hope.
that was gonna be one of my other questions, is just what was, a day in the life like when maybe things were at their most rough? Like, what maybe I'm assuming it's in the nursing home, but maybe not. Um,
Oh, I think that's a good distinction too, because in the nursing home, I flourished.
Oh, okay. See,
Um,
so wrong
yeah. So
assumption. Wrong
I
assumption.
spent there. See, it's a very interesting, but I feel like that's what my story is all about, is about literally everything flipped upside down. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
if you think one way, just flip it. That's
Okay.
probably more
Yeah.
accurate. But
Yeah.
it was as you would believe it would be trying on our marriage and
Yeah.
trying on relationships. Yes. But as far as my health went, I was getting personalized one-on-one attention with multiple different kinds of therapists, and I know you know what that's like with your
Yeah. Yeah.
occupational therapy. But isn't that what
Yes,
you
yes.
do?
No,
Yeah.
it's true. And
Okay,
I've
that's what
done
I thought.
a internship in a skilled nursing. No, you're
Yes.
so right. I've seen people have that flourishing experience where the
Yeah.
burden of their care is spread out between so many experts and you have a lot more support.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was a really unique thing in that respect. A lot of I mean, I still had to do speech therapy for learning how to eat again because the
Mhm.
muscles,
Yeah.
that's a skill, man. That's a skill.
It's a very complex
Walking.
yeah. It's a motor muscle activity people don't
Yes.
think about in the same way that talking is. Um,
Yes.
yeah.
So my worst, I guess, prior to that, there will be days that I learn about. I know this. There will be days going forward that I learn about from my husband and from my
Mm.
mother-in-law and from people, my aunt who came right up next to me, right beside me, and were the ones carrying me, during times where I have my own version of it. I know what I experienced. There was one particular time that I guess I could start with this one.
Mhm.
I have a sewn in IV line in my chest called a Hickman,
Mhm.
and it's permanent, and that's what it's intended to be. But also, no line is actually permanent. It cannot
Mm.
be because of, the way they wear out or infection or anything like that. So, this is my fourth one of these.
Okay.
And since I've had three more before this, um, we were running out of places to put
Mm.
them. And I had to have a line because that was how I ate my vein food. That was how
Mhm.
I got my hydration and nutrition. And so when I got at my worst, I've had one time where this exploded, the line itself.
Oh.
Yeah. And I woke up as it ruptured and there was blood just freely flowing from my chest everywhere. Um, and then my husband he woke up because I screamed his name and nightmare of all nightmares for what he saw in that moment.
I'm
So
so
we've had
sorry.
moments like that. And then we've had moments all the way to where I'm in my mind, the way I am living is breath to breath, and the
Mhm.
breathing is not easy. And
Mhm.
I'm my husband has been told she has 24 hours. She will either be gone in 24 hours or she'll be on a ventilator and then she will be gone. And
Wow.
he was told that by my critical care pulmonologist, who is still my pulmonologist to this day, but that was back in probably 2015 or 2016.
Wow.
He was told that, and I was in the room. We were in my ICU room in the hospital, and my doctor was on one side of my legs at the end of my bed, and my
Mhm.
husband was on the other side of my legs at the end of my bed. And they were speaking to each other about me. And I thought I was a part of the conversation. I
Mm.
really truly thought, no, guys, I'm in here. I'm for sure going to be okay. We're going to do this thing. I
Mhm.
wasn't speaking, I
Okay,
wasn't
yeah.
able to vocalize that. So these are just the very basic, quick
Wow.
brushes,
Yeah.
broad strokes over some of the depths of what we went through. I've been carried lots of places. I have spent a day, just everywhere you could imagine in the depths of you being real sick. Just extend that, your worst moment, extend it over the course of a few days. And then it's just, and just completely helpless. Like literally, I
Mhm.
cannot do a single thing for myself. I lost my eyesight one time because I've had septic shock 2 times. I've had like 4 times with sepsis, maybe more than that
Wow.
actually. But it's all
Whoa.
these things where I just should not have survived them, first of all. So thank you, Jesus. I have a
Mhm.
whole nother thing with that, but that doesn't necessarily, that's just a whole personal thing there
Mhm.
because it's
Mhm.
been a long road and I'm only speaking to my experience because that's
Right.
all I can
Right.
speak from. But,
Right.
there were a couple times where I lost my eyesight in the
Mhm.
middle of my emergency room fiasco, you know, because everybody's
Oh.
trying to, "You have septic shock. This is very dangerous. You know, let's get everything going right now.
Mhm.
And do you know who you are? Do you know what septic shock is? Do you know what day it is?" All those kind of things. And then my response to that, because I remember this very well, my
Mhm.
response to that was, "Are you still standing in that corner of the room? Because I can no longer see anything."
Wow.
So when we started learning, I mean, when I started losing abilities like that
Mhm.
in a very, 911 had been called, you know, all this kind of manner. And then my doctors would show up to the ER too. That's how close to death I was several times,
Mhm.
where they are at the ER with us, because we think this one's it. My husband had to say goodbye to me 4 times. 4
Oh my
times we said
gosh.
actual, real deal goodbye. Like, really, really, and one time, there's a 5th time that I said it to him on video because I knew he wouldn't make it in time.
Oh. Oh my
So, I have
gosh.
that video. There's a couple, videos like that, that I have that are very depth. There were a couple that at the time I deleted. My
Mhm.
husband took one video of me just so that he said so that he could show people when the doctors asked about what was she like before, you know, this
Oh.
horrible thing happened or something
Yeah.
like that. And he would just show them the video and be like, "This is what she looked like before." And it was literally, I watched the video like a day later, this one particular, and I was laying on a bed. I had absolutely, it looked like I had inverted, you know, like my skin was
Ah.
now in, it was sunken in,
Mhm. Mhm.
and it was not rosy in any way. And it
Mm.
was just, my breath was very shallow with a little bit of the kind of
Yeah.
thing, if
Yeah.
you could hear it at all. So, and I wasn't moving, I wasn't doing anything, I was staring straight up. My eyes weren't focused on anything. You know,
Mm.
I don't remember him taking that video. So
Mm.
we have those kind of depths. I don't
Mhm. Mhm.
know how else to say it, but that, we have those kind of
Yeah.
depths.
No, and I know, again, I know it takes like emotional labor to share, you know, publicly these
Yeah,
stories and experiences, but that, and I, like we said earlier, I know that's going to help others feel less alone. And
that's
like
all I
I'm
want.
just I'm curious if, again, if you have the spoons to keep talking about it. Do you feel I mean, this seems like such a basic question, but do you have like a sense of real like fear and anxiety around death, or is it at this point something you've kind of like, because earlier on we were talking about how it's like death is inevitable and we're all going to die, but do you know what I'm
Yeah,
saying, like because you've had such
I
near,
know.
I feel like you can go either way, like you could either become super like anxious and nervous, or you could just be
And
more
I will tell you, I have gone both ways.
okay. Okay, again,
And
so there's no
I
tidy narrative.
definitely,
Yeah.
I am,
Yeah.
exactly, I'm as human as it gets. And
Yeah.
just like
Yeah.
anybody would expect, and I've, therapy, all of it, just like anybody would expect, it's, ah, definitely appropriate to say I grieved, have grieved am grieving, will continue to grieve. Um, I don't know how long because I don't know anything about
Right.
the future or anything like that. But I can tell you about now and today I'm doing pretty well with that concept. My faith again is a big thing for me. But
Mhm.
I did still, it's important for people to know, like, just because I say I believe in Jesus and all of these things, that does not mean I'm 100% good. Let's go. Yeah.
Oh,
Let's
yeah.
just go ahead and roll on
I'm
out.
at peace with
That's,
everything in the
yeah,
universe.
I'm at
Yeah.
peace with everything. Yeah. No, now I do believe there's access to that, but
Yeah.
it is not, woo, humanity. It's so hard. So,
Mhm. Mhm.
no, I've definitely been through the stages of the anxiousness, but it wasn't ever anxiety in the, like, in particular, one time when my husband raced to the hospital to say goodbye to me, there were, the crash team was being called,
Yeah.
and it was, I don't know how else to explain. It was a God thing because my personal nurse practitioner, who was like my primary nutrition doctor, who managed all of my vein food, she just happened to be walking by my room as this happened, and she has two hospitals she goes through. So when she was walking by my room, she saw that, she came, rushed into my room to just hold me. And there was a very marked, I don't know, something within these type experiences changed something within me to not make me completely cool as a cucumber and yay, we're good, not necessarily,
Mhm.
not necessarily to be that confident in my security of no anxiety, but
Right.
to bring me so much closer to the reality of, like, oh wait, why exactly, this is just how it is, and this is just the way life is. This is going to
Mhm.
happen one way or another. And I have lived for so long in this stasis where I'm
Mhm.
just stuck. And so I have to figure out, how am I going to live while stuck in the ditch? Because what
Yeah.
good is it that I'm doing all of these treatments and all of this stuff if I'm also, like, I'm just being kept alive to then have another stroke or another, all of those things,
Yeah.
pulmonary embolism, brain bleed, all of these things inside of me. And that is a struggle. That is a real question that people have to ask and we don't often talk about. And it's very
Mhm.
difficult to bring up.
Mhm.
And it's really hard to face that kind of question. But there is a peace for me through Jesus that is
Mhm.
accessible, where there's a moment where, when you realize your spirit, your body is going to deteriorate, because physiologically that's what it does, like
Yeah.
scientifically that's what
Mhm.
it does, and it breaks down. And once you hit a certain age, it's going to just continue in that pattern. And that is not to say everything is terrible and everything is
Right.
horrible and everything's going down. That's not at all. It's only to say we are human,
Right.
and
Right.
this is how it goes. So I want to hold as much space as I can, in grace and in kindness and in love, to know that everyone around me is also sharing that same exact
Mhm.
uncertainty and that
Mhm.
same exact moment of anxiety and that same exact fear and the same exact, the way I phrased it is, this is what the death toll everything has become for me. The way I phrase it is, because we know deep calls unto deep, we have asked the same questions. We may not
Mm.
be in as serious, like you were talking about, you don't want to do the severity Olympics. I do not either.
Yeah.
That is not
Yeah.
cool. And to plus, I can't ever be you in your body. So by
Right.
default, we can't actually compare what it's like. So it's really a thing where for me, then it comes down to we're going to ask similar questions. We're going to ask, what am I still doing here? Why this? Why that? What now? What then? What if? Why this? How? All of these questions, the what, who, what, when, where, why, and how, we're going to ask them. We're going to ask them because we are the same when it comes down to the very core of who we all are. We are all human beings. We are all the same. We will ask similar questions. What brings us to ask those questions may be entirely different. But when we drill it down to the essence of it, this is what connects us. And I can go forward knowing I'm not alone in that.
Right.
I'm not alone in that because every other person here will also have these same feelings and same fears and thoughts and anxieties. They will just manifest in ways that are more specific to their journey than mine. So that's the only way that I've been able to. That's it.
Oh,
That's the only way.
no, it's funny because I don't come at it from a faith perspective, but I come at it from the self-compassion practice and that from Dr. Kristen Neff. And it's really interesting because you first have to connect with what it is that you're suffering. What is your source of suffering at the moment? And then you treat yourself with compassion, like the compassion you give to a friend. And then you recognize that your shared humanity, that this is suffering is part of the human experience. This is not a moral failing on your part or anyway. So
no, it's not at all.
Yeah. I love it. I love
it is
that.
not a moral failing. Sickness
No.
is not a moral failing.
Nope.
This is not a punishment for something that you did. No.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So many soapboxes. Well, I really, really super appreciate your time. I mean, I want to talk to you for like 5 more hours, but I also want to respect that this is a lot. Maybe we'll do a part 2 sometime, but
there's just one other thing
I was gonna say
that I did not get to say. Okay.
Please.
So the main survival tips that I would have is the nutrition, hydration, oxygen, and rest. Underneath a shelter, you have to be sheltered, and then you feel weary, you don't know where you're going, you don't know what's next, you're scattered in your mind, you don't know how to settle yourself, and you're getting lost in the uh-ohs and the oh-nos, the spiral. My doctors approached saving my life over and over again the same way that I then approached it in therapy and in counseling and in speaking with friends is nutrition, hydration, oxygen, and rest. All of these things are required for a body to survive. So all of these things are also going to be required for my spirit, my mental state, to move forward successfully in the world. So that's just that's one way that I try to make like a practical tip. If you're out of balance, out of whack, check your nutrition, check your hydration, check your oxygen, check your rest, and check your shelter. There's your 5-minute check. That's it. Just give yourself some rest.
I love it. Bringing it back to the basics. Cause so often
it back.
I mean, I know from my life, the one that I historically had like kind of shirked on was rest. Like, oh, I can push again. There's that wayward optimism. I can push through, I'll stay up late to do this or that, but the rest and in occupational therapy, we kind of have this framework of activities of daily living, and rest is like a different bullet point than sleep even. So
it is,
so there's, you could lump them together totally fine to say, rest and sleep, but they are 2 different things. You need to rest, sometimes because your mind is actually not very rested when you're sleeping. Your mind is very active, so it's really kind of fascinating, but anyway, side note.
Isn't it? It's exhaustingly fascinating.
Yeah, exhaustingly fascinating to think about rest, which is supposed to be restful. Yeah, that's one of those ironies. But yeah, was there anything else that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get a chance to?
I mean, friend, we
I know.
we went places that I did not know we would go, but
Oh.
also, it was great. Thank you so much.
Oh, no, thank you, and
Oh,
I just love that we just connected, like, literally 4 days ago at the autoimmune co was it even 5?
yes.
Was it 3 days ago at the Autoimmune Community
I
Summit
don't know. I
in
have
the
not counted.
comments, just chatting during
Yeah,
the speakers, and like, "I like what she's saying," and she's like, "I like what she's
yeah.
saying," so I love
I was
that.
like, "Hey, I like this."
Yeah, no, and can you, I will be putting your links to your
Oh, right.
website and your social media, but can you just say, for those who might be
Yeah,
having, what's your
of
Instagram and
course.
Twitter?
So my name is Hey Ferris, and that's
Mhm.
all A's, no E's. So it's
Mhm.
HayFarris, like Ferris wheel, but with an A. So I'm
Mhm.
at Hey Ferris on Instagram
Perfect.
and on Twitter, and I share on Instagram and on Twitter, but I have my website where I write specifically about this 10-year situation and my life
Yeah.
now, and that's heyferris.com. So
Yeah, it's really wonderful. I really, really encourage you to check out her
thank
blog
you.
and again, just really I'm so happy that you're in this state right now of, relatively higher energy levels than you've had, for the last decade. I mean, that's something
Mhm.
to celebrate. And the fact that you're using that part of that mental energy to do this podcast, I feel very honored. So thank you.
Oh, no, thank you. I just want people to be able to possibly, if they could, say, "Hey, look, I'm not alone in the depths of this moment," and, like, surviving survival mode is a
Mhm.
real is a real topic, and it's so hard to talk about it because when you're in survival mode, you can't talk about it. You have no energy to talk about it
Mhm.
and to give wisdom about it and to ask questions about it or to even listen to other people or search for other people who have been there before. And so one of the first things that I really wanted to do is like, if I get enough energy back in, I want to share pieces of this
Yeah,
because
yeah,
they're it's just my one experience and all of us are going to have different experiences, but we will ask similar questions.
yeah. I no, it's very resonant. It's very deep. I do think a lot of people avoid thinking about near death experiences because it feels too painful or too scary, but it
Yeah.
is something that we are all, like you said, very eloquently, that we're all going to be faced with at some point. Apparently, some people more frequently than others.
We can just ah!
You're like an
I don't know what to say
expert.
about that.
You
I'm
need to get
not
like a
at all in
frequent
any way.
card. Yeah.
The frequent
Flyer.
flyer.
Yeah.
I need the pilot to give me the little pin or something.
Yeah.
Oh my
Like your
goodness.
next
No,
visit's
no,
on
thank you.
us. Yeah. No,
I
but
know, right?
yeah. And I'll
No.
put some more again because vasculitis is not as well
Yeah.
known at times. I'll put some more links, with regards to like which
We
kind
have
of
the
doctor.
Vasculitis Foundation
Okay.
here in uh, the USA, in North America. There's a Vasculitis Foundation. They're doing great. There's like I've just seen them flourish and blossom over
Mm,
it's like since 2012, you know.
yeah,
The
yeah.
amount of information even has changed so
Oh, that's
greatly
wonderful.
since I was a patient in 2012 versus a patient now in 2022.
Right. Well, in three
So,
weeks, I'm going to the American College of Rheumatology conference, like the Convergence annual conference. And so I usually keep my eye out mostly for like the inflammatory arthritis,
yes.
news, but I'm going to definitely add on some vasculitis sessions.
Vasculitis, yay!
Yes, because, and it
Yeah,
is,
we're here, we're here.
yeah, exactly. It's like scleroderma. It's like one of the ones that's not as,
Yeah,
it's officially a rare disease, right? I
yeah,
think you wrote that
it
on your
is, yeah.
blog. Yeah. So anyway,
Mine
sorry.
is, yeah. That's
I have a
okay,
hard
no, that's
time
totally
wrapping up
accurate.
conversations.
No, me too. It's gonna be not great. We're not gonna be good
That's
at
okay.
wrapping up. We're just gonna be like,
Is
part
anyone still listening?
a million. 5 years later, hey.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is this tape still rolling? Yeah, digital
I know.
is not, it doesn't, you can just keep recording forever. It's
And this
not.
was my first Zoom ever.
I
So
know. I am so proud
I'm
of you.
so excited it worked.
You are an expert. I love it. And you even have a cute background. I just love it. I love
That's
it.
just I live I mean, I live right. This is the
Yeah.
bed that I lived in for the majority of those years. And so I knew that these are all my things, but I did try to squish them more so that it wouldn't be as,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah. Oh, I
out
love.
order. But then all my tape started peeling off. I was like, it's gonna be a mess. They're just gonna
Oh,
fall
it's
off
so
while I'm
cute.
talking. But it's
No,
fine. That's
I
This
love
one
it.
is fun. This one is my one of my life sayings. When life hands you lemons, don't make lemonade, make whatever the heck you want.
Oh, I love
Mm.
that.
It's definitely, if you wanna clone your lemons and then, like, cure some rare disease, do that. If you
Please do
want
that. Yeah.
popsicles, make that,
Oh,
know?
I love it. Yeah, make popsicle.
Anyways.
Oh, I love it. I love that. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And I look forward to continuing being in touch on our various social media
Yes, new
platforms.
friends.
Yay. Okay. Bye bye for now.
Thank you. Thank you so much,
Thank
Cheryl.
you.